Shalom and good morning. Ooh, I'm already so slow. Oh, shoot. Yeah, everything's still really like rickety and whatnot. That's one thing, like FYI, if you guys are ever in a power outage, unplug everything. Because when the power comes back on, I've fried a few things in the house, and one of them I think is my computer. It's working, but it's like not great. So just be aware of that. So thank you guys for being flexible and coming into class. I'm calling week 3 the week 3 what the hell. So that's definitely the theme of the week. So again, thank you guys for being flexible. You guys saw everything that's up and ready to go, right? Yay, thank you, Molly. You guys saw everything, tackle it. You know, again, I took all the points off, so tackle it or not. You know, for a lot of you, probably the ones who are here, you guys are like, the star students are like, yeah, let's get ahead. Which is great. So you guys have a possible 25 points of extra credit by the end of the week. So kind of fun. Plus the discussion board's something super fun. Has anybody started it already? No? You guys freaking out about it?
I have like pictures and stuff on like ideas on what to do.
Yeah, don't like overthink it. Just make something fun.
There was this one video that I watched. It was like an origami DNA thing.
I saw that one. It's really involved.
I don't know.
It's like
It looked really easy at first, but then they started doing like diagonal like folds and like I don't even know. It got really weird at the end.
No, I like origami. I've been doing it since I was like 10, but still I was like,
yeah,
stick with licorice and gummy bears.
I know. Yeah, I saw that one too. I might do that. It looked fun.
We actually would do that one in class.
Really?
Yeah, I'd bring all the stuff when we do that one in class. Kind of fun. And what I would do is have everybody build like half of a ladder, and then you have to find your pair find somebody else in the classroom that matches your base pairs. So we would get up and get out of our seats and kind of like find somebody. And guess what? Not everybody would match, right? So then those would be called mutations. So we talk about that too. So I'm just kind of like opening the format, but I want you guys to have fun. I don't want discussion boards to be one of those like, I hate those. And yeah, they're kind of weird because a lot of people wait till the end. That's why I kind of push for the 2 due dates or whatever, or the 2 target dates. But it's supposed to kind of make you guys be social, right? And connect, and stay connected even though we're not connected. So let me answer some questions about anything new this week, like because we kind of went through a little funky little shift and you guys had to wait on me and whatnot. So you guys are good with all the stuff's up except for the quiz. I will open the quiz up today. The quiz is just regular 10 points, so I still want people to, even if they blow off the whole week, they still have to kind of sit with the book and do the quiz. I think that's fair. And then the outline should be ready to go. Again, these are target dates. If you happen to, again, this also kind of avoids the fact that sometimes when people upload stuff and like maybe you walk away and your computer like goes and it doesn't really upload. So later when people go, but I uploaded it, I did it on time. It's like, just do it now, right? We're just going to take away all the weirdness. And if there's extra weirdness, then I, get generous. So then outline's ready to go. Discussion board just fun. Just have a good time with that. Again, I really like seeing, because I have this idea of the things that I've done or I could do or the things I have around the house. And then I see totally different stuff, which is so cool. Really, really cool. Yeah. So another little tip is like, again, you do not have to spend money on this, but if you do, Dollar Tree stuff is so cheap. And they have pipe cleaners and beads and straws and popsicle sticks and the whole 9 yards. So have fun with it. Why not? And and especially if you have like a little person in your bubble, like you have a younger sibling or children, why not? You get them involved. Who cares? Get them learning about what it takes to be a human. Yeah, good. What else? What other questions? Nothing? You guys are good? You guys are golden? Also on the deep dive personal learning journal or the reflection, I'm really curious to see what grabs your guys' attention, because this chapter is really kind of out there. This is like, yes, we are in a child development class, but this chapter really kind of starts going really into the weeds in terms of like hard sciences and what ifs and historical representations, a lot of different stuff. So when I say deep dive and I give you guys a few things to look at to prompt you, My suggestion is when you watch those videos that are kind of in the module, you know, on the side of YouTube, there's all these different things that you can just keep going down the rabbit hole. I don't know about you, but I've gotten caught up in like plenty of rabbit hole. So for those of you who were able to see the video link, we talked about just basic genetics and epigenetics. And then today I'm going to get through as much as I can. And then if there's anything left over, I'll just do a third video like I did for chapter 2. Cool? Cool. And again, I put everything as a Sunday due date at 8 o'clock, so don't let it pile up if you are doing it this week. And have a good time. Good. All right, so I have, oh, let me admit. Hello, my 2 new friends. I was just like rambling, so I didn't see you in the waiting room, so I apologize. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to pause for no reason. Okay, so again, chapter 3, part 2. So we're going to talk a lot more about genetics today, most specifically about genetic linked recessive and dominant inheritances. We're going to talk about that today. How we pass along our genetic instructions to our children, really. And I have a few videos ready to go, but let me get the PowerPoint ready. Yay, there we go. Okay, good. And again, jump in at any time if you have any questions, and really excited about this. So we made it through all the way through our, hold on, going slow. We made it through this part of the first lecture, and then we did talk a little bit about like genes and DNA and our alleles and genome. We talked about this. Now, again, we did talk a lot about epigenetics, and I'm hoping that it kind of like sparked your desire to go down a deep dive on that one. But the methylation, the book talks a little bit more about that too. It's the actual instructions that come that's kind of like surrounds the DNA on our chromosomes. Like it'll tell this group go over there and tell this. So methylation is like these invisible little codes that are these instructions, which is really good. So let's see, where did we end? Okay, good. Yeah, we ended on the microbiome. Love this. So I love this part about the about our book. So the microbiome starts on page 70, and this is kind of a new branch of science that they're talking about. Micro meaning small, and biome meaning, you know, our biology and our the dome of our biology, and specifically they mean your body, right? So everybody's chemistry is different, right? You may know like somebody in your family who has heartburn a lot, or has acid reflux, or gets sick all the time, right? Or never gets sick, right? Everybody has a different body. Me, I always have this upper respiratory thing in the spring, and that's just my allergies, right? But now they're also looking at when a baby is having gestate, is, you know, being born, right? Being formed in the mother's womb. What does the mother's womb, like the oven, what does the oven do, right? So think about it this way. Can you do mac and cheese in the microwave? Yeah, sure can. It's all right. It does the trick, right? Those little things. My kid loves doing them, right? Can you do them like the traditional way where you boil the water, make the pasta, and drain it, and do all that stuff? Yeah, for sure. You can do that too. Can you do mac and cheese in the oven? Sure can. Absolutely. That's my grandma's go-to. I also have a new recipe to put it in the Instapot. And I had one for the crock pot. So what I'm saying to you is that you have different ways, different ovens to create a child, but what does it do? Do all those recipes turn out exactly the same? No. And so I will kind of point this out as we go, because I have a couple of videos that actually might kind of hint at it, and then I'll be a little bit more specific about it, because they're saying that the microbiome has a lot to do with how a child is born, and if they can, you know, they have not just getting genetically things like food allergies, but how they interact with the environment. Like, are they sick all the time, or do they need to be held all the time? There's some studies that are talking about the microbiome determines gender, sex, right? That because the mom's body acid was like this, it sparked or released or helped that part of the genetic determination of became a boy or girl. Like, it's really kind of interesting. We'll talk more about that. So I even had a conversation with my boss about this. How about the X and the Y chromosome are actually so different that they have different materials and they have different codes on each one, that it does make a difference. It's really kind of interesting. So we'll talk more about that. So think about this. So yeah, bacteria, fungus, viruses, archaea, which is like little tiny little protozoa, yeast living in every part of the body. Now, some scientists say that if the baby is exposed to those things, they build up a tolerance. So I worked, before I worked here, I worked in the HIV community, and there are babies who were born to an HIV positive mother, but the baby was HIV negative. So there's these new areas of study that are really, really fascinating. And you can tell I'm talking about it because I'm fascinated about it. I really do think if the word microbiome was a little bit more common in our lexicon, in our everyday language, people would understand that, number one, your entire immune system doesn't live in your lungs or your brain, it's in your gut. And so when people are sick all the time, there's a lot of digestive issues. 60% of America has digestive problems for a number of reasons. We're eating the wrong food, our soil's different, we're taking antibiotics, even something like a Tylenol Advil can throw off your microbiome, things like that. Or the fact that we spend so much time indoors now, but then when you switch to outdoors, then how are you reacting and things like that. So, and then as you age, your microbiome changes as well. So the microbiome of college students is pretty strong. So, but again, there's a lot of different things that affect it, like stress. So things like if you eat a lot of sugar, everything, bacteria, yeast, everything, boom, 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 it's up, right? And then sometimes your allergies flare or your immune system goes down and you get sick, you're more susceptible. So it's really interesting. I'm hoping that with this whole COVID business, people start understanding personal biology, which is microbiome. So please ask me any questions about that if you have it. At a different time, we can go through it. Okay, so the technical term for the reproductive cell, either sperm or ova, is called a gamete or gamete, right? So you'll hear me saying the gamete, the male gamete, the female gamete, and that again will like kind of blow over, kind of bleed into chapter 4 as well, which is good, because instead of saying sperm and egg or sperm and ova, okay, what I want you guys to do is take out your pencil or pen and just just do a dot on your paper with like a period at the end of a sentence. Just write that down. Or if you don't have a pen or a pencil, just look at the period at the end of a sentence. Probably not on your screen, only because it's probably too big. But if you just wrote a dot on the period of the end of a sentence, that is the size of a human egg. You can put it on a finger, you can see it, it's that big. It's big. How big is a sperm? Can you see a sperm? Super, super tiny. And I'll show you videos that show you scale, where the egg is like massive. It's like this, and there's oh god, right? So just remember that the human egg is that big. All life starts in that period on the end of your sentence. Crazy, right? So when you have both of those genetic materials combining, and we'll have videos on it, it's called a zygote, right? So a fertilized egg is a zygote. Now you get, so we have 46 pairs, but of chromosomes, but you get 23 from a parent, 23 from a parent. There you go. There's your 46. We do have a video that talks about, actually shows it. It's really crazy. It's cool. And then copy number variations means that there's going to be patterns. There's going to be patterns that copy and replicate on your DNA, on your chromosomes in the fertilized zygote. Whew, right? So this last bullet that says maybe inconsequential, lethal, or something in between. Inconsequential means that it's, again, a mutation that nobody's going to see, right? Maybe I have like a thing on my tongue that nobody sees. Big deal, right? But lethal means that it could be something that had to do with a brain stem or a spinal column or the heart or the lungs or the liver, the kidney, like, and that fetus or that zygote will not continue, right? So that's what they mean, fetal. And then something in between means that the development keeps going, but there's something wrong. It could be missing a finger. It could be kids are born without an earlobe, right? So it could be, again, a big deal to where the fertilized zygote just doesn't continue. And then it could be something that's like no big deal, but it's just individual or disappeared, or it shows up at puberty. So again, there's so many different genetic blips and variations that can happen at different times. It's really, really fascinating. So again, jump in if you have any questions. Again, we talked about the pairs. Now, out of the 46 pairs, 44 of them are called autosomes. They sound like a car, right? Think of all the cars on the freeway, or, you know, Autobots, right? And the last two they determine the sex. Now, when I say sex, I mean the actual, like, we would call it gender as somebody grows up and expresses themselves. But if a child is born a boy or a girl, and by the way, just that right there on those two, that sex chromosome, there's 18 different variations. So people are really like hung up about, is it a boy? Is it a girl? Guess what? There are a lot of in-betweens, okay? So homozygous means two of the same, means same gene, and heterozygous means different gene, right? So if you said females have the XX that determines the sex chromosome, that is a homozygous pairing, right? Two of the same. But if you have an XY, that's a heterozygous. So I will be asking you a question like that. So again, people do ask this question, who determines the sex, right? Depends on whether the father's Y sperm or X sperm gets to do the fertilization, right? So think about it this way. If a mom is XX, let's do it like this. Mom is XX and the dad is XY, let's do it like this. He's gonna give an X or a Y. Mom's always gonna give an X. This is the one that goes X, can give a X or give a Y. What? Yeah, so thank your dad. Right? Now think, you may belong to a family that has all girls, right? My dad had 4 girls or 10 girls or whatever, or you may belong to a family that has all boys, right? And it's interesting, there's some studies that show like at certain ages, men will pass on more genetic material to determine a boy, because then that's a faster, quicker way to determine more boys. And again, our book talks about how there are more boys born every day on the planet. It's about 120 boys to 100 girls. So about 20 more boys are born every day, 20%, than girls. However, there are more girls on the planet. So what does that mean? I'm going to open that up to the group. If there's more boys born, but there's more girls on the planet, right? So we said 20% more boys, right? So we should have 20% more boys on the planet than girls, right? No, it's 51-49. There's more girls on the planet by 1%. Whew. Let's see. Yeah, we have a chat room. So we got, hold on. I'm going to break that out. Let's see if I can get that. It's not letting me see that chat room. Oh, maybe it's behind here. Hold on. Let's break this one down. Let's break this one down. There we go. Jonathan, do we die sooner? Yes, that's part of it. Absolutely. Men have a shorter lifespan. Yeah. But then we would have maybe 10% more males on the planet. And then as we got older, that number would get smaller. What else? What else is a possible reason why that? There's more boys born, but there's more women on the planet.
Aren't boys harder to carry? Aren't there more complications with them?
You know, that I don't know. I'm not sure about the actual gestation. That also might be a genetic issue, because you've met women who have like easy breezy pregnancies, and then you have women who can't get out of bed, right? And then sometimes they will connect it to the gender. They'll say like, well, my girls were easy to carry, but my boy was like murder, right? So there's a genetic piece there too, right? Like specifically in my house, my mom had like secondary infertility, which was like you have one kid and then it's harder to get pregnant. She had like 2, and then it took her a long time to get pregnant, and then after me it took her 10 years. So there's genetic connections too, to like your family patterns, right? It's not just like, oh, there's twins that run in my family. It's like sometimes it's little things like that, gestation, or when my mom was pregnant with me, she ate pickles, and now that I'm pregnant, I eat pickles. Like are some connections like that, but in terms of harder to carry, that I don't know. I can tell you that when babies are born, girls are stronger. I had my pediatrician tell me the best preemie to have is a girl, because girls are really, really strong. And I was like, I have a boy. I have a boy who, if you haven't seen him yet, he's in school right now, but he was 3 pounds when he was born and strong as hell, thank God. But yeah, that was pretty gnarly to see. Like if you have like a little water bottle, like your little Dasani water bottle, that was like the size of my child. Yeah, crazy, right? So there's another reason. So like what Jonathan said is like we die earlier. Yeah, it's true. But guess what? Boys are born, but sometimes don't make it, right? So maybe so when I was visiting my kid in the NICU, there were some kids who were getting surgery right there on the unit. Really, it was really hard. And I mean, I don't really know the gender breakdown, but so boys can girls can be like really, really strong, and then boys tend to, have other complications. What's another factor that shows up maybe in the teenage years? Why there's more girls on the planet? Anyone? I know y'all have seen the YouTube videos of, and I would love to say women or girls making like, homemade rockets and balloons on lawn chairs and ramps off the side of the house to go, water sliding. The impulsive risk-taking behavior is elevated in boys. And so we'll have, by gender, by age, we'll have a few more boys than girls. And as we age and boys have a lot more accidents, there's that too. So it kind of goes with what Jonathan was saying. We die earlier. But yeah, sometimes it's because of impulsivity, right? We all know somebody who was super impulsive and did something like that and didn't make it, right? So I'm not saying that women don't do that, but please somebody send me a link of a woman, like doing a rail grind and like landing on her face constantly and getting up and doing it again. Yeah, I don't see that. Okay, so again, now when we talk about determining the sex of a fertilized egg and sperm, the zygote. Now, again, when I said the mother gives an X and X and the father gives an X and a Y, you really only have these options. So when we say 22, these are the autosomes. And that last one, that 23rd one, is this X or the Y. So as this X comes down here, the Y comes down here, this is what the father gives, right? And the mom only has X. Interesting. Oh, and by the way, the X chromosome in comparison to the Y chromosome is like 3 times the size. Interesting. I have a video on that. I'll show you that in a sec. Now, again, so as we're playing the odds here. Even though if you bring each one here down, a Y, and then the X over here, and then you bring all the X's down, you have an option of 2 males or 2 females. Yeah. So again, you could have been born and I have 3 siblings. In my house, it's 3 girls and 1 boy, right? So those odds still happen like that. So we had a boy and 3 girls. Those odds still happen. Or you can still, even with these odds, you can still have all boys and all girls. It's just that this is the pure odds right down the barrel. So those are, just like regular odds, half and half, 50-50. But again, here's another thing. We're going to talk about certain genders, like again, or certain developing fetus don't make it, right? So think about it. For every time, and we'll do the math in a sec, for every time there's a baby born, there's a few that didn't make it. And a lot of times there's a part of the female's body, your body gets rid of it and people don't know. So there's multiple times where a woman would be pregnant and not even know. And it wasn't a developing fetus that was going to be healthy and the body already takes care of it. So it's really interesting to think about it. And we'll do the math in a sec. Okay. So partial gene deactivation means that you could have a child that has all the genetics, everything, all looks really, really good. All the 46 chromosomes are there, the 22 autosomes, the last pair of sex-determined genetic contributions, and then sometimes the gene just like shuts off, right? Have you ever just had like a light bulb that just stopped working? Kind of like that. So again, it could be a problem or it could be completely invisible. So again, it's really interesting. Again, all these pieces of science are still trying to figure things out. So if you look here, right here, Here's all of our chromosomes, right? This XY right here. So is XY male or female?
Isn't it male?
Yep, very good. And down here, we talk about the XX, these last two. This means it's a
Female.
yeah. So if you're trying to remember how to remember that, just be like, women are extra. You can do that, that's fine too. Although I know a lot of men who are extra. So if you look at this one, this XY here, you can see how the Y, see how small the Y chromosome is? And some of these are bigger, just naturally bigger. They just did it by size order, right? Look at these bigger. So you don't have this small Y chromosome. Let me do my annotation. You don't have a, hold on, let me do this annotation. Oh, hold on, spotlight, there we go. You don't have this little Y chromosome here, you've got this one. But here's a really interesting thing I want you to think about. Sometimes there's a partial gene expression here. Like, yes, this Y chromosome is small, but maybe this partial gene expression, and you may have a child born with ambiguous genitals, right? That's maybe not quite a developed fully penis and not quite a fully developed vagina. It's like this. So again, this happens a lot. And so sometimes medical professionals, you know, work with parents and make a decision, or sometimes people just let it roll out and then figure it out. So every once in a while when I teach a class like this, they'll, you know, somebody will say, yeah, my parents had to make a choice, or, I'm gender fluid because, things like that. So I like that our society is allowing for more variations in this. But I'm telling you right now, and we'll talk a little bit more about blips. You can have an extra chromosome here. You can have 2 extra chromosomes here. You can have them both missing. You can have one missing. You can have the other one missing. Yeah, and so let's talk more about that in a sec. Good. Next one, opposing perspectives. So again, this one talks about the cultural practices of preferring one gender, one sex over the other. And so in some countries, you are not allowed to have a second child if the second child was a girl, which is really kind of interesting because I understand, like, men can spread their seed everywhere, but girls have the eggs, again, of your grandchildren we talked about. So a lot of people really prefer boys. I originally wanted a girl because, I'm a girl. I didn't really understand the difference, right? But now that I'm a boy mom, it's unbelievable. He's like rough and tumble in the right amount and drama queen in the right amount. So but everybody has a personal preference and whatnot. So that's kind of interesting. But some people, I'm telling you, even not just in India, I know this picture kind of talks about India, but there are some people even in this country who, they terminate pregnancies based on the gender or the sex. And so everybody has their own choices, and it's always such a controversial issue. I just tell people, if you're going to make those choices, just keep it to yourself. Right? Even when, so we'll talk a little bit more about IVF in a couple more slides, but even when I was going through IVF, they were just like, hey, so we could implant this many, but if you have too many, then we can always reduce, which is the nice way of saying abort, right? And it's like, and it's really like a hotbed topic because people are like, oh, no, you can't do that. But people make choices, and obviously the first choice should be safety, right? Right. So again, preferring one gender over the other, to me, there's cultural practices. I think those cultural practices are changing. And like, in communist China, that used to be it was against the law, right? And they would just abandon the babies. And now they're allowing for a little bit more of that. But again, it's a big deal. So big controversial topic there. Now, again, I have a video about some of these things because some of this stuff is a little bit dry. And so I want to make sure it's at least interesting, right? Now, I'm going to tell you this. Duplication and division of a fertilized cell, meaning next chapter we'll talk about that it takes up to 3 days to fertilize a cell. So you're like having a big blowout in Vegas and you hook up with some rando, right? 3 days later, you could be pregnant, right? So it's an interesting thing. I've seen like the pop culture is like, oh my God, I'm so pregnant, like right now. It's like, no. So it takes a minute. It takes like up to 3 days. But once that ova is fertilized by the sperm, that cell division, meaning like, hey, we got a job to do. We're going to divide cells and whatnot. And we'll show you this. And again, I have a video that shows those 46 and 46 coming together, splitting in half, and then doing 23 and 23 to make another 46. That's a trip, okay? And then there is a division process. It's not just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each cell divides itself, right? So first you have 2. This is, again, by the way, you can see this. Remember, the egg is like that big. You can see it on the end of your finger. You can see that. You just can't see the cells inside. So this is a microscope with cells dividing in a petri dish, right? It's crazy. So even though it looks like 3 here, it's actually 4. There's a 4th cell in the back, right? So these 2 split. So it goes 2, 4, then 8, right? And then after 8, what would happen? Come on, it's not real math. We can do this. After 8, what happens?
16.
Yeah, after 16, what happens?
32.
And then
64.
128. Like, we can keep going, right? So again, but here's the cool thing. At this point, it could start making choices. And I mean it, and I have a video that is going to blow your mind, that the fertilized egg can start making choices for the mother. Not joking, right? So there's this wisdom that comes not just in the DNA that gets separated and then repurposed into a new human, right? But at the same time, you can, sound here at the bottom of the slide, it says you can have twins at this point. You can take one egg, and one egg can develop into quadruplets. One egg can develop into 5 quintuplets, sextuplets, octuplets. One egg. Ooh, that's crazy. So again, that brings us to the octomom. The octomom. What people, tend to forget is that she had 6 kids before she had 8. And one set of twins before the 8. So out of her 14 children, 6 are girls. No, 4 are girls, and there's 10 boys. Now look at this picture here. These are all her kids, and these are just octuplets. This is not the older ones. By the way, she kind of lives near campus. Interesting, no joke. If you look at all of them, they look a little bit different, but all kind of similar. Like they kind of have like the hooded eye. He's got bigger eyes, but look at this one. This one's like, whoa, vanilla bean in the mix. What's up? Right? And this one's like, oh, I'm a caramel latte, and I'm like a strawberry, like frappuccino over here, right? This sheave right here is a very interesting expression of genetics, right? Because one of her grandparents is Lithuanian, which is kind of like, I don't want to say Russian, but kind of, but blonde hair, blue eyes. So she passed these recessive genes to one of her children, right? And we talked about in Mendel's Peas in the video in the last segment that we talked about how you can have something that's invisible in your offspring, but it gets carried forward. So she carried the recessive gene for blonde hair, blue eyes, and here we go. This kid is super blonde. So blue, I mean, you can see those blue eyes are piercing. The rest of them, she might have like bluer eyes, but they're darker. Look at her skin's olive, but these 2 girls look very similar, but just the pigment of her skin's a little bit different, right? He's really light. So it's interesting, and they're about a year or 2 older than Peyton, because I was going through IVF at the same time, which was really annoying because it was also like in the Friends show at the same time. I was like, I do not need to be going through this, like, and everybody's all talking about it and like, no, it's a thing, right? But it's really interesting because they did, hers was medically, so they did it with IVF, meaning they take the sperm and they egg out, they fertilize it outside the body and then reimplant it in. Oh, right? And so I'm going to go back once. I'm going to go back one cell. These are some of the terms that I want you to at least to know. But again, at birth, you go from 1 cell or 2 cells that divide into 10 trillion cells. Amazing, right? And the placenta, we'll talk more about this in chapter 4. It's the actual sac. It's like the housing, the little satchel that carries the baby. Now, stem cells, you guys may have heard this one too, and this might be a deep dive for you. Stem cells are kind of like a cell before it starts doing its job. It's kind of a blank cell in a way before it starts the methyl groups start giving it its instructions. So a stem cell could be any cell, right? And that's why stem cells, they talk about stem cell therapy, because they're trying to take, usually, let's say a friend on campus who has a problem with her hip or her knee, and they take her blood, they pull it out, they spin it, they pull out stem cells and plasma. Yeah, it's really interesting. And then they re-inject them back into her hip and her knee, because the theory, remember we talked about chapter 2, the theory there is that once it gets into that place, it'll kind of like look at its friends, what should I be doing right now, and those methyl groups will start kicking in, right? So you'll start seeing stem cell treatment for everything. And by the way, ladies, don't fall for the stem cell stuff on like lotions. You can't just like put it on your face, and it doesn't have to, it's all internal. You'll see it. Stem cell therapy for your plant stem cells. Like, no, doesn't really work. So don't fall for it. Don't fall it. Okay. And again, yes, we talked about Nadia Suleiman. So IVF is becoming a lot more popular. And I don't mean popular in the way that it's like cool and stuff like that, because it is surgical. It is pretty intense. You have to follow this regimen. Again, I went through it, and you have to follow this regimen to the T, or else it doesn't work. You're basically replicating your cycle that can sustain a pregnancy, and then you go in for surgery. They remove the eggs. They put them all together in the little dish, and they actually will. I chose to do something called intracellular spermal injection, ICSI, where they literally inject in that tiny little egg that you saw, the little dot at the end of their. They can get a needle in there and it actually put the sperm right in there, because that could be one of the problems, that the sperm doesn't actually like drill all the way through. So it's really kind of interesting. So IVF, this is why like again, Mariah Carey had her twins, and Julia Roberts had twins, and J-Lo had twins. Right? And the reason for it is, I mean, a bunch of different things. Our infertility is going down across the planet. That could be part of our evolution. Stress has a lot to do with it. The microbiome has a lot to do with it. Older moms have a few things to do with it. So that's kind of a big deal there. Any questions so far? All right. So let's talk about twins. I know that we have twins in class every once in a while, or you have twins in your family, or you have twins like your friends or twins or whatever. And just know that you can have one zygote that divides into two people, or you can have two different eggs. Interesting, right? So monoid, meaning one, splits into two different children, right? Could be three, right? And then dizygotic means that there's actually two different eggs that were released at the exact same time, and they're both fertilized at the exact same time. It's not crazy. It's very, very possible to do, right? Another thing I found out during this whole process is that women don't ovulate every month on the regs. Some do, some don't. And so I found out that I don't. And so that was like, oh, really? Then why all the rest of the business? Right? Life is weird, right? And then sometimes people will say, like, twins run in my family. Well, which type, right? Fraternal twins or identical twins. Yeah, and you'll see that means maybe that mom's like, releasing more than one egg during ovulation. Yeah, it's really kind of fascinating, and I am really curious about it. I'm always fascinated about identical twins who are two different. Fraternal twins have to be two different genders, but identical twins that like end up being totally different. I really like that kind of stuff, because I think that everybody is different, so it's really kind of fun. Make sure you know the difference between phenotype and genotype. I like how they have a title here that says from genotype to phenotype. Genotype is our genes, so all the instructions that make us, and then phenotype is like the photograph. I kind of said that in the other video, but again, just remember, my genetic material, I carry, I express recessive genes, but I carry what the dominant genes are in my family: brown hair, brown eyes, brown skin. So my children would probably not look like me, right? Interesting. So again, with Nadia Suleiman's young boy right here, the super blonde one, he carries he is the recessive expression, but he carries the dark. So his children will probably have dark eyes and dark skin, dark hair. And by the way, boys sometimes marry the mamas. So yeah, he's going to pick a woman that looks similar to that. Oh yeah, trust me. My son already told me when I get married, my wife's going to be a teacher and a good cook and she's gonna have a big body. I was all, dude, you do not need to marry your mother, but okay. That's like, great. So, okay, so gene-gene interactions, right? So maybe in your family, so in my family, we have kind of like this gene-gene interactions, right? So you could have a parent with 2 brown eyes, and then they have a child that comes out with 1 set of blue eyes. And this is where we use the term, it skipped a generation. It didn't exactly skip generation. One of these people, or both of them, see how there's a big B and a little b? This means dominant brown, so the dominant wins. Recessive blue is hiding. Dominant brown, recessive blue is hiding. So look again, you bring this down here, the B, the little b, and the big B, little b, and then you have one kid who gets all the recessive stuff. Yeah, and that just happens. That just happens. There is, change I know, very, very normal. Very, very normal. So don't give your sibling a what for if they look a little bit different. It's in the bloodline somewhere, right? So I got the green eyes and like kind of the reddish hair from my grandmother's side, but her hair was kind of more of a brown, like a kind of like an ashy black brown, you know, like she's Portuguese. And then, but her parents were like blonde, super blonde. And then my other grandmother, she had like brown hair and kind of like a medium brown hair, but her husband had brown eyes. So my mom has like the, I don't want to say, like kind of like light brown eyes, and then I have the green eyes. So it's this interesting thing that who gets what. And even things like the cleft chin, you guys know what I'm talking about, the little slut in the chin. My brother has it, and then my little sister has it. So that's another trait that can come through like this. Dimples are mutations, so they can come through or not. You could have nobody with dimples in a family, and then one shows up. It's just a mutation. There's a mother to son transmission, and let's talk about that too. There are certain ones that only get passed from mother to son, but the funky thing is that the mom doesn't have it. So things like hemophilia, these call them sex-linked traits, right? So you can have the gene, but you don't express it. You're not affected by it. So again, one of my husband's cousins, her and her sister carry the recessive gene for hemophilia, which means like it's like when somebody gets bumped, they don't clot. Their blood doesn't clot, so they could bleed. They could bleed hard to where they could go to the hospital and like die if it's really severe. And I was like, are you sure you want to have kids? Because if you have a boy, you're going to most likely give him hemophilia. And she's like, yeah, that's fine. We can handle it. For me, I mean, my choices are different. I was like, out, right? So again, there's certain ones that are sex-linked traits, and we'll talk about that in a sec. There are certain different things like nature and nurture. People always ask, like, what's the gene for alcoholism? What's the gene for intelligence? What's the gene for height? What's the gene for this, right? There's certain things that take a genetic marker and a support of the environment. So alcoholism runs fairly deep and wide in my family, but it's not interesting to me. Like I could tell that's a slippery slope, but yeah, all my siblings have DUIs. Like it just skipped me. Oh yeah, my uncle, my grandparent, like alcohol was like, I saw that coming. I was like, woof. But here's the thing, when they talk about alcoholism as polygenic, it means there's more than one gene that contributes to alcoholism. But culture is pivotal, meaning like, if I grew up in a dry household, maybe I would be less likely to drink. Or, I mean, opposite is true. I saw it very destructive in people, and I was like, there's nothing in a cup that's worth that, you know. DUIs are gnarly, man. And that's if you don't, run into somebody and kill somebody. Like, I mean, that's the least amount of your worries is DUI. So to me, culture has a lot to do with it. I know that some people have it's just their coping skills. So my uncle was a Vietnam vet, and so that was part of his deal, and nobody really bugged him about it because we're like, we don't know what it's like to be in Vietnam. And so things like age, like how long you live, and your eyesight, and like baldness is a pattern, is a sex-linked trait from mother to son. So gentlemen, if you're worried, if you're going to go bald, look at your mom's dad. Sorry to tell you. Yeah, so it's right. It's kind of interesting, right? So again, things like that. Heritability means inheritable. Are you that's so these things like good eyesight or good hearing, 75% of it is inheritable, right? So again, so let's say I have glasses for distance, right? My mom had glasses for up close, and my dad had glasses for distance. And first I needed them for up close when I started working on computers, and then my eyes just switched. And now it's like blue light. So I do have a set of like Harry Potter glasses just for blue light, because you know, there's a thing, I could be ruining my eyes just because of my environment is 6 to 10 hours a day on a screen. Yeah. So there's a weird thing where like your genetics show up, but your environment supports or puts that down, right? Brings it up or puts it down. Interesting. Any questions so far? Usually people have questions at this point. Yeah. We have like a half hour, which is good. We're jamming through here. So let me double check real quick. I queued up a couple. Let's do this. Let's do the autosomal recessive inheritance. This is a really cool video. I have another couple of videos on like sex chromosomes versus autosomes, but I think that one's, I'll post it in the module, but that one's a little bit easier to understand. This autosomal recessive inheritance, meaning like if I have a recessive gene, how do I pass that forward without having it myself? Really interesting.
Our bodies are made up of billions of cells. Inside each cell is our genetic material. Chromosomes are the packaging of our genetic material. We usually have 23 pairs of chromosomes, and we inherit one copy from our mother and one from our father. If we unwind a chromosome, we can identify genes. Genes are the basic building blocks that make proteins.
I'll freeze with it.
Genes are like the blueprint to make a machine, and proteins are like the individual components of that machine. Proteins make us who we are and help us grow and function properly. Our genetic material is made up of DNA. Deoxyribose nucleic acid is the very long chains of 4 chemical letters: adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine that combine to make our genetic code. We all have small variations in our genetic code. Gene variations are like spelling errors, where, for example, there is a T instead of a C. A variation in a gene that makes it faulty or not working properly is called a mutation. Faulty genes occur commonly simply through chance. They have to occur in one individual for the first time at some stage. They are not related to anything a parent could have caused or prevented in any way. They occur because the process that replicates and divides our genes so we can pass them on to the next generation is complex, and mistakes occur.
So again, that's like saying, you know, millions of years ago, there was one butterfly on the planet. Now we have hundreds of different species. There's one little blip, and it's just like it just shows up. People kind of freak out. Why did this happen? Why did this happen? It's like nature has blips, man. We don't live in this like perfectly created anything, right? And so think of it this way: a polar bear is a genetic mutation from a black bear. A polar bear's skin is black. Its fur is white, right? But again, that mutation may have been a mistake, but then maybe the bear just migrated north, or the mutation happened because the environment was pushing for something different. Again, we don't know those things, why these things happen, but they just happen. A lot of times I think humans want an explanation. I need this, I need to know this. And it's sometimes things just happen, right? So yeah, I guess I want you guys to understand that there's a funky lottery, but it's normal. Sadly, sometimes.
For each gene, we have 2 copies. One copy comes from our mother, and the other copy comes from our father. In an autosomal recessive condition, an individual needs both copies of the gene to be faulty for a condition to develop. The parents of the child usually carry only one faulty gene of the gene pair.
Okay, so this is not the sex-linked trait one. This is not the mother to the son. This is when, again, just like the blue eyes and the brown eyes, if there's a large bead, which the brown eyes actually going to show forward, but both of those parents with the brown eyes have the recessive gene for blue eyes. So the smaller R is the recessive gene, but put those two people together with the smaller R, and guess what? You have a 1 in 4 chance based on that 50. Remember when we put all those little lines down? You have a 1 in 4 chance of passing that on to an offspring. So for example, I do carry, again, through all my, we call it assistive reproductive technology, found out that I carry the recessive gene for cystic fibrosis. So the dominant gene is no cystic fibrosis, and the recessive gene is, yeah, you got one. Again, it shows up in the white community, and if my husband had it, which he does not, if he had the big R and the little r, then we would have had a child with, yeah, 1 in 4. So had we had 4 children, or you get that lucky lottery where that 4th child is really your first child, and then the first child has it. Now, again, that's another reason why I decided to adopt, because holy cow, if you don't know what cystic fibrosis is, look that up. It's just like you're weakening of the lungs, and you kind of don't live past 30. It's a hard life. It's a really, really hard life. So again, if you and your partner, and again, if I had my way, everybody would do genetic testing before they had children. But that maybe be in the future, right? Mark my words. If you were able to get your genetic testing done beforehand, there still be blips and mutations. So again, I just want you guys know that there are things that, like, that can show up in certain communities. That again, if it's 2 recessive traits that have been carried forward, and of course, I went back to my parents. I said, "Which one of you guys have it? Which one of you carries cystic fibrosis?" I said, "Like, I don't know. How would we know that?" Because they wouldn't, right? Because neither one of them had it, but they brought it forward through their parents. Interesting. Yeah.
They are healthy carriers. It is estimated that every individual is a healthy carrier of several faulty genes, but a recessive condition occurs only when both individuals in a couple happen to carry the same faulty gene. When healthy carriers have children, there are 3 possible outcomes. 1. The child inherits both faulty gene copies and has the condition. 2. The child inherits only one faulty gene copy and is a healthy carrier, like her parents. 3. The child inherits both working copies of the gene. So each time healthy carriers have children, there is a 1 in 4, 25% chance that their child could inherit both faulty gene copies and develop the condition. When an individual with a recessive condition has children, their children will usually all be healthy carriers of the condition. Their children could develop the condition if their partner happens to be a carrier of a faulty gene, but this would be a rare occurrence. Brothers and sisters of a healthy carrier could also be healthy carriers themselves.
Cool stuff, huh? So I don't want you guys to get paranoid about what's in your genetic makeup, but you probably have stuff. Everybody's got stuff. And the point is that my suggestion is that if you happen to be going through assistive reproductive technology, do the genetic testing first, because we didn't. And I was with Kaiser, and they kind of did things a little bit. I think they're better at it now. I mean, that was like 15 years ago, 20 years ago. But yeah, no, I was pregnant at the time. They're like, "Oh, you need to send your partner in, just make sure that, you don't have a 25% chance of having a child with cystic fibrosis currently." And my pregnancy didn't progress. So kind of like another silver lining and whatnot. And then at that point I was like, you know what? Like, we did go through 1 round of IVF, but after that, I mean, I know my sister-in-law did 2, and then people keep doing it, and they're expensive. It's a good $10,000 a pop if you have insurance, right? So I know some people who just like kept doing it like 9 or 10 times. It's like, no, I did the 1. I don't like gamble in Vegas. So I was like, no, there are like, so I tell people, are you more invested in being pregnant, or are you more invested in being a parent? So for me, like, I didn't have that whole like, oh, I need to be pregnant, have this life come out of me. Yeah, that sounds like an interesting adventure. But I wasn't like in love. I need to be like that. I can be like Mother Earth without creating life out of me, right? So I figure like there's so many people who, so many babies who need a home, right? And I didn't go to a different country. I know people did. My niece and nephew are from Korea, but my kid is from San Bernardino. I didn't need to go nuts about it. But yeah, it's really interesting. I tell people, do you want to be pregnant, or do you want to be a parent? because if you really want to be pregnant, go for it. Do as much as your heart desires and your wallet can handle. You know, I don't ever tell people to stop. Do as much as you feel is right? Again, these are very serious like questions and decisions. And I tell people you can be private about it, but do it as much as you need to be okay with it. But if you really just want to have a child in the house, if you're dreaming of a toddler, you know, if you're not dreaming of diapers, jump right to it. Just go adopt. Trust me, it could be really quick, even in this country, because there's so much need. So that's my 2 cents on adoption. But it's not for everybody, but I think it's great. Trust me, the nature versus nurture conversation happens every day in my house versus in your house. Maybe if you were born to biological parents, oh, you got that from your dad, you got that from your mother. I used to hear that from my parents. You're so much like my father right now. Sorry. Like, or you're so much like your dad right now. Sorry. Okay. Who else did I get the genetic code from, right? So yeah, and so there's so many different things that are connected to our genes, but again, there's genetic problems. I mean, like genetic disorders that are very, very serious. And so sometimes we can see them coming, right? If there's a genetic like a blip or mutation and it gets carried forward, scientists are starting to look at parts of chromosomes and parts of our DNA and pulling them out and fixing them and putting them back in. No joke, right? And that's a very controversial issue too, because one of the first studies that they're using to eradicate is like a childhood cancer or childhood blood disorder. And so what they're doing is they're finding the parents who are either the recessive carriers or a child who was born with it, and then they're really manipulating their DNA, which again, some people get really nervous about and they get really, like religious or biblical or whatnot. So it's always a very controversial issue. But again, information always combats prejudice. A lot of people make decisions based on information they don't really know. But again, let's talk a little bit more about that mutations here. Again, mutations occur all the time. Sometimes it creates a failure in the pregnancy, which again, so I had like a tubal pregnancy, and still in this country, I mean, we have a lot of technology here, but a tubal pregnancy could still kill a mother. So they're like, well, we're going to have to help you get, so with certain cancer, they gave me cancer drugs to get rid of that in that particular area, or they would have had to have surgery and go in there and take it out. And so I responded to the cancer drugs, which is interesting because cancer drugs are supposed to attack brand new cells from developing, right? So that helped that. It's kind of weird. So there's these things where it's like harmful mutations could kill the baby and the mother. So again, sometimes you see these things coming because maybe the pregnancy is not progressing, or the mom is sick, or there's bleeding or what. But again, sometimes you don't see these things coming. Woof. Right? And then over the age of 35, they call that advanced maternal age. And so they talk about maybe your eggs aren't as fresh, but there are some studies that say that that's not true either. So again, like how they say like 50 is the new 30. Yeah, we're living longer, and we have different sort of bodies and resiliency, and we have different environment and things like that. So I know a few women who got pregnant at 40 and the kids are great. So what's the big deal? So again, everybody is different. Again, some people carry pregnancies like no big deal, just pop them out. Like the Duggars, what was that, 19 kids? I don't know, it's like 20, 21 now, I don't know. But some people are just violently ill when they're pregnant. So again, some of these are mutations and some of these are what your family carries forward. It's kind of interesting. You see how I'm totally fascinated about it? What about you guys? What's grabbing your interest right now so far? Because you guys are going to have to do the deep dive. I mean, obviously it's optional this week. It's extra credit, but if you're curious like me, your extra credit is like no brainer. Who's kind of getting like excited about this stuff?
I am, for sure.
Who is that talking? I can't tell.
It's Molly.
Hi. So what's sparking your imagination right now?
Well, like how we were talking about earlier, the different, like the odds of like the fathers passing the material. So like I come from a family of 8 children, and all of my siblings are boys. So there's 7 boys and then me, right?
Are you the youngest?
No, I'm the second oldest, which I also find weird.
It's like,
so
who
yeah, I just
knows?
think that that's really interesting.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
who knows at what happened? I mean, there's some scientists who say that it has to do with like stress, like stress
Right.
the father and stress in the mother, and so maybe there's something going on at that time. I don't know.
I mean, they were in their 20s, so probably.
I mean, there's got to be stress. I mean, everybody's got stress, you know, or
Yeah.
it's diet, or they moved, or you know, I mean, there's different things, right?
Yeah.
There's some people who believe that you could take a certain supplement and it will change certain things. Like, so lysine is the actual protein that changes or determines the switch on for gender or the switch off for gender. Because there's a point where all developing zygotes are female, and then they switch to male. That's another video I have. It's fascinating. Good one. Anyone else who's got any like sparks, like, oh, is this why my little brother doesn't look like any of us?
I actually have that too.
There's got to be, out of 8 of you, there's got to be a piece. There's like that
Yeah.
Nadia Suleiman piece. Like, there's one of you that's like, oh, yeah,
Well, it's a pretty even split between my parents, recessive and dominant genes. So my mom's brown eyes, brown hair, my dad's blue eyes, blonde hair. So half of us are that way and half of us are another way.
that's how
But
we
there's
are.
one who's a redhead. He's ginger.
You guys, I'm sure you're merciless.
Milkman kid, FedEx. Yeah, for sure. He loves it. We shine him on.
Well, so ginger could also be carried forward from prior generations, or it could be a mutation. It just showed up.
So you're saying I can call him a mutant? Is that what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Great.
I give you
Can't
the
wait.
Professor
So excited.
Apple. Yeah. Well, think about it. We're all mutants in a way. So think about it. The planet, brown hair, brown eyes is dominant. Anything other than brown hair and brown eyes is a mutation. Right.
I watched a video on that.
Yeah,
Like
isn't that
how, like how
crazy?
blue eyes isn't like actually like it's like a mutation. I was really surprised by that because I feel like a lot of people have blue eyes.
Yeah, and it's a mutation, meaning it lacks a pigmentation.
So like how did that become a thing?
Okay, first of all, like the full-on lottery blip, a
Okay.
full-on sneeze in the space-time continuum, like full-on just blip. So it's kind of like a type of melanin in the eye, and the brown actually, like all eyes have the blue kind of in there, but like my eyes are green, so the brown is like shut off.
Okay.
The brown is not present.
That's cool.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? And that's why you can see, even when I had people in the class and after we did our intro like discussion board, I would have us all kind of group up by eye color, and then even in there you see a variation. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because not all blue eyes are the same, not all brown eyes are the same. I have a friend with straight up, her eyes are so light brown, they're yellow. And I mean, I guess we call that hazel, but holy cow, talk about a mutation. Like hazel? Where does that go? And honestly, you guys know that you can have, there's people with red irises. If they're albino, they have red irises. And then actually violet is actually a mutation and is present as an eye color. And not even talking about the 2 different eyes, right? Like David Bowie had 2 different eyes. Mila Kunis, 2 different eyes, right? Your husky, 2 different eyes. Yeah, mutations. Absolutely, just rando. But again, humankind just wants an explanation for everything, but when really life is way more random, it's kind of interesting. When you start thinking about this, you start thinking about, why do I get wound up about anything? Because stuff is pretty random. Yeah. So think about this. So going back to like the chromosomal issues. When we talk about not exactly 46, there are, and I mentioned earlier, some kids who are born with 47 chromosomes, or 48, or 45, or 43. Like, I mean, there's instances that people are born and their chromosome, their genome is missing big chunks, and they're still alive, but they may have a lot of medical issues, or they don't develop hormonally, or they don't live very long, or they live totally fine. They just can't have children. It's really interesting. So 99% of surviving people who are born have the right amount of chromosomes. So let's do the math for a second. Let's say in Orange County right now, we have, let's say 100 kids were born at Chalk Hospital today in Orange. 100 kids. One of them would have a chromosomal either anomaly where they have an extra chromosome or a one less. Yeah, that's normal. Totally normal. Happens all the time. One extra chromosome is called Down syndrome. It's called trisomy disorder. They have a third sex chromosome. Yeah. So in my family, my dad's sister has Down syndrome. And so just in the 60s, when they were just born that way, right? And they're born still like that to this very day. But in the 60s, they institutionalized kids like that. They just told the mom, oh, you know, she's a little different. So we're just going to take care of her in this hospital forever. She lived in group homes her whole life. Now it's like, let's give you a social worker and a game plan and send you home. Really how things have changed in 40 years. It's crazy. But again, we have, look at this, again, 45, 47, or really 48 or 49 chromosomes. People who can have extra stuff and still be alive, but there's other things that come with that. So, and that's another thing. My brother married a girl who was missing a chromosome and she did not know. Come to find out that her parents knew, because when it came to puberty, she wasn't developing, and she was like little and petite and just like tiny and kind of quiet or whatever. And so they just did hormone therapy, and she thought that was normal for teenagers, right? Because how do you know it's not normal for teenagers? She was going to the doctor once a week to get like hormone shots and like that, and she did kind of develop. But guess what? They had trouble getting pregnant, and they went into genetic testing, and the doctor said, you can't have children. You don't have all your chromosomes intact. And she was like stunned. You know, this is a 30-year-old woman who had no idea. And then went back to her parents and said, hey, you know, look at this thing. We can't have children. And their parents were like, well, yeah, we didn't really tell you. But it's like, oh, people, right? And I used to call that the great white way. Just don't talk about it. It doesn't exist. And then I realized that transcends every culture, every family. Just don't talk about it. You know, don't talk about it. So interestingly enough, and, you know, I think, you know, people have different reasons to get married, and, you know, their marriage ended, which is, you know, that happens. But my brother was like, she can't even have kids. And then later he was like, I really don't want kids. I was like, so did you divorce her because of that? He's like, no, not really. I was like, okay. So to me, everything kind of works out or whatever. And I'm just hoping that if she wanted to be a mom, she adopted, because you can, right? It's not the end of the world. That would have been cool had they stayed married. Then like, so all the grandkids in my family are adopted, all of them. Yeah. Except for my one sister, but she's kind of out in the weeds. Yeah. My younger sister married a guy with kids, adopted his kids. My husband's sister adopted 2 kids, and then we adopted 1. And so like all of the grandkids are adopted. So we have like our little rainbow troop, which is kind of fun. So there's this interesting little thing here about mosaicism. This is something, meaning it's very rare, meaning you can have a genome that is not clear, meaning it's interesting. You can take, it's almost like somebody has like 2 overlapping genomes. That's another deep dive, if that's interesting to you. So you can have a baby who's born to a mom and not share all the mom's DNA. Very rare, very rare. It's one of those things where Maury would do the genetic testing and be like, are you the dad? Generally when you are birthed from the mom, that's your mom, but there's rare circumstances when you do the genetic testing that it doesn't connect the baby to the mom because it's mosaic. It's like 2 different genomes kind of on top of each other. So another area for deep dive. Really, really cool. How are we doing on time? We have about, yay, we're almost done. Okay, so here's our Down syndrome. We'll end here because, again, this is actually very, very common. I think in our society, Down syndrome is pretty visually common. We've seen this for years. And there's a phenotype. Remember our picture, our expression. So you don't see that this young person right here has an extra chromosome. You can't tell, right? But his phenotype expresses something that looks pretty similar. The hooded eyes, they're smaller and wide set. They're very short in stature. They have small hands with a nice crease right in the middle. It's called, oh my gosh, I forget what it's called. It's called a crease. It's like where we have a couple of creases, they have like 1. They're stocky, they're stout, they're strong, but sometimes there's language deficiencies. The IQ is usually can be variation, but it can go like 60 and below, which just means that that person needs a lot of support. So come take 205 with me. We'll talk about this. But again, my aunt was institutionalized, but then she got to come live with my grandparents on the weekends, and it was that kind of situation. And now they just see right in this picture, it's very inclusion. You have typical kids with atypical kids or neurodiverse children all together. And I'm really huge on special needs and inclusion. Speaking of that, sidebar, this Friday, tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I'm doing a lecture for my 205 class, but I have a guest speaker coming in, and she's talking about special needs and inclusion and what inclusion looks like. So if you guys want to be invited to that, just send me a message and I'll send you a link. So tomorrow, if you're able to, and if you can't, but you're still interested, let me know and I'll share the link with you because I'm recording it. So because inclusion is no joke. Like, it's the law that we have to include everybody. And then if they need more supports, then we can utilize other resources, maybe move them to a different classroom. But I really want people to understand that inclusion at a very basic level, like in preschool and kindergarten, can change society. If we start changing our treatment, our consideration of people who are different, when in fact we are all different, why are we separating people? It's illegal, and we need to create more instances of tolerance and more instances of empathy and things like that. So again, these 300 distinct characteristics from the third chromosome, they have, like, even no matter where in the world person with Down syndrome is born, and whether China or Africa or Asia, United States, whatever, they have similar features. So again, sometimes there's large organ failure. They don't live very long. My aunt lived to almost 60, which was pretty amazing. So things like that. So again, an extra chromosome is very, very present in our society. Just think of it this way. There are people who don't even know they're missing one. What? Yeah, so it's kind of interesting how we think that we're so big in our britches and we're humans and we can control all over everything in our life. Sometimes not. But you know what? Sometimes it's okay. It doesn't have to be controlled. It just is what it is. So excuse me. You guys see how I get all tweaky and fired up about genetics? So cool. But again, environment plays a huge factor. And when you come take 110 with me, all we talk about is environment. We say, okay, so now you got your genes, now what? Then we talk about your influence of your school or media or peers or your community or your church or parents' work or whatever. What does that have to do with your influence? Yeah. So I'm going to end it here, but I am going to stay on and answer questions for you guys. I'm going to pause the recording at this point.